really happy to be here with you. I happen to believe that I have the best job in politics, despite the fact that we're here to elect the new president and to do everything necessary to make sure that we have a president who will move this country forward. I think being a mayor of a city is absolutely fantastic because we actually do stuff. Mayors work every day. They have to produce every day. But one of the other things that's great about being a mayor is that we meet our constituents on their level every day. And in the process of doing that, we learn about the issues that most affect their lives. So with your permission, I'd like to talk about 3 issues that I know affect the lives of our citizens and why that ties into what we're here doing today and what we've done this week in nominating Hillary Clinton to be president of this country. She is eminently qualified. Her platform and my ideals about what we need to do in order to keep this country vibrant, which in my mind starts in the cities, which produce a great deal, well over 60%, 70% of the gross national product comes from cities. The migration has reversed. People are moving from the suburbs back into cities. Density is growing. Things are changing rapidly. But one of the things that needs to change rapidly is the way we address infrastructure. This country has traditionally and consistently underinvested in infrastructure for decades now. And that, think about this. An $83 billion infrastructure package would generate 1.7 million jobs. And we're not doing it. We have people out of work. We have things that need to be done. We have crumbling infrastructure. Crumbling infrastructure means less productivity. Less productivity means less profits, less economic activity. Less economic activity means fewer jobs. Fewer jobs means unhappier people. Unhappier people mean conflict. And we're not doing something that is right in front of our eyes. Everybody knows it. Republicans know it. Democrats know it. Presidents know it. Cities know it. Everybody knows it. And we're not doing it because we have not found the political will and the political courage and the ability to talk across the line in order to put together a process for building our infrastructure. 1 in every 4 bridges is either functionally obsolete or so badly deteriorated it needs to be replaced. Okay? The American Society of Civil Engineers does a grade card every 4 years. The last one they did was in 2013. They gave the country a D+. They gave the state of Missouri a C-. And frankly, I think that that grade was inflated. And yet we're not willing to not have been able to make the investment necessary. If we make an investment in infrastructure, we can solve a lot of problems. 1, we'll become much more productive. And 2, we'll put people back to work. And when people are working, things are better. The best social program in the country is a job. And we have a lot of people in need. So I've had conversations with Secretary Clinton and I'm not saying that in any personal way. I happen to be president of a couple of organizations that put me in that position. But those conversations indicate to me that she does have a plan for infrastructure. And it is something we desperately need to do. We are number 16 in the world in infrastructure and sinking. We're behind Germany, we're behind France, we're behind Japan, and we're sinking. When we talk about high-speed rail, by the time we do high-speed rail, Elon Musk will have his pneumatic tube sending stuff through, and the technology will pass us by. It is time for us to do those things that are necessary to rebuild this country, and in the process of rebuilding the country, rebuild the middle class by providing jobs across the board and the skill sets necessary for people to survive in this day and age. That's number 1. Number 2, imagine my surprise when I'm sitting in a preschool or early learning program in Denver, Colorado, and in walks Hillary Clinton and sits there in the seminar with us for an hour and a half. She didn't come in with fanfare. The Secret Service didn't come in and search everybody. She came into the seminar. She sat at a table. It was a seminar that consisted of maybe 20 people from around the country. She came in, she sat at a table, she listened, she asked questions, she talked, she took notes. And that proved to me that she has a passion for something I have a passion for, and that's children. and children in the sphere of education specifically. When I came in office in 2011, we took a data dump because someone had said, you might want to take a serious look at third grade reading proficiency. Why, I asked? Well, because third grade reading proficiency is a number that a lot of times people who build prison cells look at to determine how many prison cells they're going to need in 15, 20 years. When you look at third grade reading proficiency, remember that over 60% of the people in prison, most of whom are black and brown, read at a fourth grade level. When you look at third grade reading proficiency and you recognize that those who are not reading proficiently have a 75% greater chance of not graduating from high school, then yes, third grade reading is extremely important. So we put together a program called Turn the Page KC, dedicated solely, not totally, but predominantly to third grade reading proficiency, but the things that are necessary to get there. Number one, school attendance. If you're not in school, you're not going to learn. And if you miss 10% of a school year, 18 days. If you miss 18 days of school, you're not going to succeed, all right? The other is kindergarten readiness. You'd be surprised. I didn't know that you could actually show up for kindergarten unready. What do you need to know? I mean, I'm in kindergarten. I got my shorts on, my shoes are half tied, I got my t-shirt on, I'm ready to roll. But you know, when you think about the fact that kids born in poverty hear 30 million words fewer by the time they're 3 years old than kids born in the middle class and upper class, and you recognize what that means to vocabulary, and you recognize what vocabulary means, not just in terms of education, but think about it. If you're hearing 30 million words fewer, that means nobody's talking to you. And if nobody's talking to you, how are you going to be socialized? And if the words that you do hear are shut up, sit down, get out of the way, and stand in the corner, don't do that, then that's not helping. So you go to school under vocabulary and vocabulary rise. Somebody look that up. Google that. Google that. It wasn't all that easy. I didn't say it well. But if you go to school with a decreased vocabulary and you go to school with low social contacts and you're sitting there and now all of a sudden you're in a group of other kids that you don't know, that's going to cause issues and conflicts. And that's going to retard your ability to learn. And if you're not ready for kindergarten, it's going to be a heck of a lot harder to be ready to read and proficiently in third grade. So through Turn the Page, we took that data dump. We found 33.8% of the kids were reading proficiently in third grade. Now in Kansas City, there are 15 school districts in whole or in part. So that was a broad dump across the board. And on the one end, we had schools that were doing much better, and on the bottom end, we had one school that was like 18% of kids. Unfortunately, that school district was predominantly black. Guess what? Think that's a problem? I do. Also sits in that district is in the highest poverty areas, highest free and reduced lunch areas, highest crime rate. All of those things are tied together. So we got together, we pulled groups together under an umbrella. We work collaboratively. We have over 1,000 volunteers that go out and read with a child every day. They're white, they're black, they're white people reading to black kids, black people reading to white kids, Latinos reading to each other in cross lines, and we're doing several things. So now we're improving the reading, but we're also improving the social contacts. When you're a kid sitting there and you've not heard or been told to be suspicious of somebody because of the color of their skin, and all of a sudden you're sitting there with the person you're supposed to be suspicious of, and they're becoming your friend, becoming your mentor, somebody you can count on every day or every week to show up and sit and read with you, and you get to like them and they get to like you, all of a sudden those stereotypes melt away. That's the type of contact that we need more of. And we don't, and thank God you're not allowed to have a phone, and you're not allowed to text and tweet and do all that stuff. You actually have to sit and work with a person. So the number's gone up to 49%. We're not even close to where we want to be. We wanted to be at 70%, but it's a little harder than we thought, to be quite honest. but we're making progress. So we're up from 33 to 49%, but we're continuing to work. We have a board that's independent. I've worked hard to try to make sure that it grows separately from me so that when I leave office, it continues, because the work is important. And we have raised the level of reading and the conversation about reading in our city to levels where it hadn't been before. Previously, under the charter of Kansas City, Missouri, education wasn't even mentioned. We had no contact with schools. And when I decided to do Turn the Page, people would say, that's not part of the charter, you shouldn't be doing that, you should be worried about roads and bridges. Okay, fine. I said, well, you tell me anything that is under one of my duties in the charter that's not affected by education, and I'll stop. Yes. And when they weren't able to, I said, now, come join us, sit down and read with the kid and learn something. Yeah. All right? So we're moving in that direction. Last thing one of the things that makes me a very strong supporter of Secretary Clinton is the fact that, I don't know if any of you have ever had the, I won't say pleasure, because that would be a total misnomer, the experience of leaving a speech at 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, and hearing from your police officers in the vehicle that there's been a shooting with a 19-year-old mother, a 1-year-old infant, and her 17-year-old boyfriend or friend shot to death, and off you go to the crime scene. Or you hear about, on a Sunday morning, a drive-by shooting in which a 2-year-old asleep in their bed, shot in their head and dead. Or you hear about any of the 50-plus murders, and you're there at the scene talking to the police officers, watching the loved ones, the parents, the wife, the husband, prostrate on the ground crying because they're so grief-stricken. And it's time after time after time after time. We're living in slow motion mass murder. Slow motion mass murder in our cities every single day. And then we have the episodic things that happened in Orlando and Newtown and Dallas and every place else. I'm serious, I thought that the new level of violence in Dallas, where someone actually sniped and killed police officers, would finally wake us up, would finally cause us to do something, to recognize that we have to do something about weapons on the streets in our urban centers. Not a single peep. Newtown, kids, white kids, not black kids, white kids, slaughtered in their school. Slaughtered in their school. Outrage. News. People going to the White House. 105 laws passed. After that, 85% loosened the restrictions on guns. Dallas, only a good guy with a gun can stop a bad guy with a gun. There were a whole bunch of good guys with guns wearing blue uniforms that got killed by one bad guy with one bad gun.
That's right.
So all that's a myth.
It is.
Now, you don't have to change or challenge the Second Amendment to use common sense. There is no hunting that goes on Prospect Avenue in Kansas City, Missouri. The only thing that's hunted in a city with a rifle is another person. And too often, the people that are getting shot and killed look like me. And too often, the people doing the shooting and killing look like me. And frankly, I think that that's one of the reasons that there's not a little bit more movement. Yep. To be honest with you. Let me tell you that, you know, I'm a Marine. I fired more weapons than I ever cared to. I hadn't touched a gun before I went in the Marine Corps and haven't touched one since. I didn't mind. I actually enjoyed it. It was fun to shoot things and blow stuff up in a controlled situation. And besides that, I thought it was important for me to know because there was a chance I was going to Vietnam and I wanted to live. So I thought that it would be a good thing for me to know how to do that and for my friends to know how to do that as well. One of the things that I loved about the military is that you had no time to be prejudiced. You could not be concerned about who's black, who's white, who's Jew, who's Muslim. What you were concerned about is, can you shoot straight and do you have my back? You know how to maneuver and fire. You know how to help keep me alive and I will help keep you alive. That's all you're concerned about. So when you're talking at that level on your hierarchy of needs, all this nonsense that we have that divides us tends to evaporate. Doesn't really matter much. But at any rate, we don't have to assail, change, destroy the Second Amendment. I don't care if people want to have guns to hunt. I don't care if they want to skeet, shoot, target shoot, do anything recreational with guns. But there is absolutely no reason for an AR-15 to be on the streets of Kansas City, Missouri. We do just some basic sensible things that I don't know how you could really be too concerned or upset about doing some basic things. Well, one basic thing would be changing the Missouri legislature, but that's your thing. So here we are. We have a state now. We have a veto that I'm going to work with the governor to uphold and sustain. That would allow a 19-year-old to have a weapon, concealed carry, no permit, no training. So here's the scenario we set up. In Kansas City and a lot of other cities now, you can't buy tobacco until you're 21. You can't drink until you're 21. So imagine this. Police officer pulls over a 19-year-old for drunk driving. The guy's sitting there illegally smoking a cigarette and he's got a legal gun. That makes sense. We're not going to let them drive like that because that's dangerous. We're not going to let them smoke because you can kill yourself with cigarettes, but hey, take this gun. That's perfectly okay. The only thing the Missouri legislature can do anymore with guns is to mandate that we all have to have one. But that's already the case because there's 1.1 guns for every person, man, woman, and child in this country. 1.1 guns for every man, woman, and child in this country. And people say that makes us safer. If that's true, why do we have over 34,000 deaths by gun every year, a third of which are suicides, a huge percentage of which are accidental shootings of kids, and the rest is just urban hunting. See person, track person, kill person. No problem. Shoot through houses, kill kids. No problem. We're fine with that. Absolutely no problems with that because we do nothing about it. I wanted an ordinance in our city that's very basic. If your gun is stolen or lost, you must report it to the police. Does that make sense? Can't do it. Can't do it. State legislature won't touch it. Okay? Absolutely crazy. One of the ordinances says, no, I'm sorry, you will not open carry in the city of Kansas City, Missouri. I do not want you walking into McDonald's with a rifle on your back. Can't do it. Common sense says that when you have an instrumentality that you can link to a mass number of deaths, that you take some sort of steps to change that so not as many people die. Did it with cars. Remember exploding gas tanks? Have we changed seatbelts? Have we done a lot of different things to provide safety in vehicles, but not with guns? And people, I'm sorry, this is not the Old West. I would rather go back to the Old West. In the Old West, when you rode into town with a gun on your hip, you had to stop the sheriff's office and give them your gun. Because the only people allowed to do that were the sheriffs. So, when Hillary Clinton talks about common sense gun measures, I'm 100% with her, and the reason is very simple. As the mayor of my city, every year since 1968, 69, over 100 murders, over 100 people died in the city. And knowing that if we did some common sense things, we could have prevented some of those people from dying. You saw Mother's Demand last night. You think one of those mothers, just one of them, would do anything to have their child back? If we could have prevented one of those women from being up there, would that have been worth it?
Yes.
But we don't do it. We don't do it.
Well,
We know what to do. We absolutely know what to do. We just don't have the guts to do it. And that is a failure, a moral failure on our part. So, I plan to work with Secretary Clinton as much as I possibly can when she becomes President Clinton in order to try to get something done on our infrastructure so that we can put people to work, on our preschool, third grade education, so that we have kids that are able to compete on the worldwide stage, not just in local areas, but the competition is around the world. And if we don't have world-class education, our kids will suffer and they will not have the lives that we want them to have. And I plan to work with her on things that are common sense guns, registration, IDing everybody, so that when they go and apply for a gun, there's some information about whether or not they're crazy. You know, in the state of Missouri, that a sheriff cannot stop a person from getting a permit, even if the person is standing there frothing at the mouth. You know that you can't stop a guy or a woman who has killed or who has beaten their spouse from owning a gun, and they can't take it away from them. I mean, seriously, none of that stuff has a darn thing to do with the Second Amendment. But it does have something to do with how we value life. So what we are valuing now is political ideology and rhetoric and tons and tons and tons of money from gun manufacturers using their puppet, the NRA, to force violence down the throats of this country for no good reason. And frankly, it is time for us to do something. Not just talk about it, do something.